The NFL has decided to fine the Atlanta Falcons and defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbricht. Let's talk about what they're being fined for and whether or not this is punishment enough for the crime. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, welcome. Thank you for joining us here. We talk college football year round. If that is something you're into, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, like this video, and answer the question in the comments below. Do you think the fine that the Atlanta Falcons and Jeff Ulbricht have received from the NFL is enough? Does it meet what you think the punishment should be? When this occurred, it was a huge story, right? Massive story because we hadn't seen anything like this really happen before. And one of the questions that came out of it was not just what should happen to defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbricht. Should he be fired? Should he not be fired? Who should be held accountable for this breach in confidential information? That is what they're being fined for. Nobody cares about the prank call as much as we care that someone who is not affiliated with the Falcons organization as an employee had access to information that they should never have had access to and used that information to cause hell, right? To raise hell, to be a nuisance. What if it didn't stop there? What if you were able to use this information in other ways to further damage the reputation and or take advantage of a person at a very, very sensitive space in their life? I understand that criminal charges in this way feels a little excessive, but punishment needed to be meted out. Because once again, it's not the prank call, it is the prevention of the disclosure of confidential information distributed to the Atlanta Falcons in advance of the NFL draft, which happened to be the second most viewed draft in the entire history of televised drafts. The only one that was bigger viewed, had more views, right? We're talking about 2020 COVID, where all we could do was watch this thing from home on Zoom. Now, the prank call was received, and Shedeur Sanders did a great job with it. He's been really classy about all of this, even as he's become a lightning rod for whatever it is you think your politics are, okay? You've also had commentators like myself go out and call other commentators out or other reporters out for how they've decided to talk about this. What I wanted to know was two things. One, what was going to happen and how quickly would it happen, and would it meet what I think is a good punishment? And two, are they going to run this down for other players? Because apparently this happened to Tyler Warren. Apparently this happened to Kyle McCord. Apparently this happened to Abdul Carter, but the call was received by Drew Rosenhaus, who answered the phone, and he said, look, I knew this was a hoax. This is garbage. And he got taken with the very next pick, right? I think there's something to all of this. How was this information being guarded? Because Mike Florio did a really good job of running down how a Jeff Ulbricht, who was the 21-year-old adult, old enough to drink, old enough to drive, who got this phone number and decided to call Shedeur. We don't know if he got other phone numbers and made other phone calls, but we do know that leading up to the draft, the NFL clubs and their IT departments were issued the numbers for these calls that they would have to make privately, right, to inform their draft selection that they were indeed going to select them. They were purpose use, and they were activated the day of, right? Probably deactivated as soon as the draft ended. In between sending out that email that went to those general managers and NFL personnel and club IT departments, we didn't have enough cybersecurity training, apparently. And we have done a thing, if we're Jeff Ulbricht, because I should say he has done a thing, he being Jeff Ulbricht, where he left his iPad unlocked or did not change the password or passcode in such a way that his kid could not guess it. And then his kid was able to get this number and use it to come after Shedeur Sanders. Now, I say come after because that is a pointed attack. There's no getting around that. He didn't randomly call Will Howard. He didn't randomly call Jackson Dart. He didn't randomly call Tyler Shuck. He randomly called no one. He purposefully called Shedeur Sanders. I'm sure that if you're Jeff Ulbricht, you are embarrassed beyond what you would expect, given you're a defensive coordinator, right? And it really ain't your job to be calling anybody about anything at the NFL draft. The most you get to say is, I want that guy. And your general manager and head coach get to say, okay, we'll give him a phone call. Why are they sending these numbers out to the entirety such a large email list? Probably have their reasons. I can assure you this, they're not going to do that anymore. They're going to change the way they get down. They're going to change the way they do business, because this is embarrassing to the NFL. And the thing that I know to be true most about the NFL, the most true, the truest, if you will, the NFL does not like to be embarrassed by anybody for anything. It loves conformity. It wants you to play in its sandbox, and it wants to be vanilla. We call it no fun league from time to time, right? This is one of those things where now that you are being talked about as a security risk in an age where, frankly, we all have our fears of our private photos and our information being just sold and or picked up by someone we don't want to get to. For instance, right, you've seen how Apple has gone out of its way to promote its security. You've heard over and over guys talk about two-factor authentication, and then you figure out that Matt Weiss was criminally indicted for stealing people's information and storing it somewhere. Their sensitive photos, their most closely held digital secrets. This turns out to have resulted in a couple of guys got phone calls like it's 1995 from a payphone, right? This is a Blink-182 song for those of y'all that go back that far. What's my age again? I get it. It feels juvenile and it feels like, oh, this is an epic prank. Nah, I mean, it's an epic prank for you to laugh at, but if it happened to you, you'd be pissed. And you're going, but it didn't happen to me, RJ. I don't really care. It happened to a guy that's a millionaire several times over, and he's going to have an opportunity to be a quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. Boo-hoo, cry me a river. Cool, bet. I understand that. We can do that all the way up and down when we talk about not just college, pro football, but college football now, where guys are going, I'm not coming to your school unless you're going to pay me an extra $100,000. That doesn't sit well with us, especially those of us that don't make $100,000 in a given year and probably will never see $1 million in one sitting in our lifetimes. That aside, you can't have what is supposed to be an ironclad security event result in this kind of action, right? This sounds as ridiculous as some other things that have happened here recently, but it did happen, and we do need to protect it. So I think the $350,000 that the Atlanta Falcons, Jeff Ulbricht, are being fined is good enough. $250,000 for the Falcons and $100,000 for Jeff Ulbricht. It's going to be enough. It'll go to charity. It'll be fine. It's a billion-dollar organization. That's the Falcons. It's a millionaire. That's Jeff Ulbricht, given how long you get to coach football and you get paid at this high level. If you think that I got some of that wrong, or you think there should be something else that goes on here, tell me so. I'd love to hear what you think, because there are people that were all over the board on this. The 350 is not going to hit it for some folks, right? It's going to need to be, all right, tell me what the kids got to do. Tell me about the sensitivity training, cybersecurity sensitivity training that Jeff Ulbricht's got to go through. I actually talked to a friend who does work in IT at a major public institution. And he's like, this is not as uncommon as you think, but it is high profile in a way that you're going to have to publicly tell everybody this guy is sat down for the cybersecurity training for the next 3 days. That's just part of his gig. It's having to sit through it. Anybody that's got a food handler's permit knows how monotonous that can be, and you never want to do it again. So why don't you never put yourself in a position where you ever got to do that again? Hate that stuff. But in this case, it feels like that should be the real punishment. Sit the dude down in front of the VHS tapes that the substitute gets out when they roll in the TV, and make him sit there for 3 days watching that with nothing to write with nothing to draw with no video games near, and make sure his eyes stay open. That is the kind of punishment that I want for Jeff Ulbricht. Let's turn this into you in detention without being in detention because you don't know how to protect your iPad.